So in today's agenda, we'll just talk a little bit about understanding subsistence marketplaces. And then we have Ron, who's going to do a deep immersion into poverty. And there's no one who does this better than Ron. I mean, it's just amazing. And I'm so glad he's here. He's made the flight here to be with us today, and that's amazing. And then we have a little bit of time, maybe 20 minutes at the end. No specific part of project deliverable one, but whatever helps you. Go to the board at that time, whatever helps you. Or just stay and talk, and us instructors, we'll walk around and make sure we address your questions and put you in a good place to get you to the deliverable. Remember, in this course, we work with you. We don't work at you. We want you to do good work, and we want you to get good grades. That's our philosophy. We are not going to take the grades home in our back pockets, okay? So let's talk a little bit about understanding subsistence marketplaces, and again, back to the challenges we are throwing at you. People who fundamentally think in different ways, don't have the automatic self-confidence that we have, or even self-esteem sometimes, and cope in very different ways. The very words we use, we take for granted, right? This is the challenge we're throwing at you. And we want you to understand people very different from us, and then try to understand a need, and then articulate it, and then design a product and a business plan, and so on. Very challenging indeed, right? And we talked about what it means for your project in terms of abstracting being difficult, education being very important. People may be deficient in certain nutrients, but also deficient in the knowledge about those nutrients. Who's going to give them that knowledge, right? It's got to be you as a business. You don't have to be a charitable organization, but as a business, you've got to give that product relevant knowledge. That's missing, right? Self-esteem in marketplaces and so on. Education is central. Short-term benefits are important, but don't just focus on them. Just that people are not able to comprehend what's going to happen in 5 years. You have to make sure and address their immediate needs. I just want to talk to you for a few minutes about relating in subsistence marketplaces. And I want to make the point that it's a very intense, personal, one-on-one interactional environment, which can be rich relationally or socially. I want to say that very carefully, because it's that social relational environment, intensely relational environment, is actually a double-edged sword. So let's take a look at a couple of examples, all right? I keep talking about this example, I don't know for how many years, but it's a powerful one. And that's why I keep going back to it, and it's an extreme example. And the example basically is that here's this person, this woman, who buys from the neighborhood retail store in an urban setting. And the neighborhood retail store charges a bit higher prices because it's convenient. That's a service. That's a value that's being added, right? Smaller amounts, and also gives purchases on credit when she's in times of need. And marks up certain items even more because there's a charge for that credit. Usually marks up generic items and keeps accounts. Or she could go to the large reseller who will not give credit for small families with very low income. But you can buy it in larger quantities. You get a better deal. You get more quantity for the money, right? And so she could go there as well. Now here's this person. She tells me this is how she buys. And I basically, ask her, do you check prices? And she tells me something stunning, which is quite extreme. She basically tells me, imagine how the store owner would feel if I checked prices. Don't know why that disappeared, but yeah, there you go. So, imagine how the shop owner will feel if I check prices. It's very unusual for somebody to say that. But the point of it is that the shop owner is giving credit. And so I could look at this and say, wait a minute, this is not rational at all. She's getting cheated, she's being overcharged. Here's what she should do. She should basically go to the large reseller at the beginning of the month and stock up. Okay? That's the thing she should do. She is not doing the right thing there. Let's unpack that statement. So I said first, she should, at the beginning of the month, go to the large reseller. What did I assume? Monthly salary. She could be a carpenter, she could be a flower seller, she could be a vegetable seller. She may make no money if there's rain. She could be on daily wages. So there goes that assumption. Secondly, I said she should go and stock up. Think about that. She stocks up at the beginning of the month. In the middle of the month, she has a health emergency for her children, or she needs the money to pay the child's school fees. Which is more important to her? She can starve. She has the resilience to starve, but she has to make sure that the child's school fees get paid and the child has a way up and a way out of poverty, right? That doesn't make sense either, folks. And then we said, okay, go to the large reseller, buy. Well, she goes to the large reseller, she buys, she walks by. The one time she has money, and this shopkeeper calls her and says, you know what? Repay the loans and don't come back again. Right? We thought there was a relationship here where I would give you credit. And then what does she do when she has her next crisis? She may have to think concretely, think in the immediate, but she still knows from the harsh life circumstances that she has to negotiate the medium term. So everything we said from a rational perspective went out the window, because our rationality and my rationality is based on my certainties. She doesn't have that. She's the expert on survival. And the lesson I tell with this is the importance of having a mutual learning mindset. You bring a lot of things. I've seen that with hundreds of students. Don't shortchange yourself. You bring a lot of things. Most importantly, you bring an open mind. But let's acknowledge who the expert is on survival. Let's just hold all our preconceptions. Let's unlearn. Let's just go in bottom up and understand first, and then let's fit it into what we already know. That's our whole bottom-up approach, right? So that mutual learning mindset is very important. Just to give you another example, one of the most rational things I heard in my life is when an elderly woman in a village was asked by me, do you plan? And she said, why should I plan? Why should I plan? I don't know where my next income is going to come from. Planning is a good thing if you have certainties. So let's question our very assumptions of rationality, right? And that humility is very important. And you folks have seen time and again how well you do that, The emotional quotient that you bring to these situations. We have facilitators 3 weeks from now, but even in those virtual interviews, we've seen the emotional quotient that you have, which is so far ahead of anything I have had. So one other thing about how entrepreneurs work. Here's a person I met more than 20 years ago. She makes this Indian pickle. And typically, if you're very poor, the rice is the staple in South India. So if you're very poor, you can boil a lot of rice, and then you add this pickle and you eat it. You don't have money to make lentils or curry or meat or any such thing, okay? And so she makes this pickle, and she packs them, and so on. And so basically what she does is she manages a number of different entities. On the one hand, family. Family is the buffer. Family survival is the reason why she started the enterprise. It wasn't a choice. She didn't choose to be an entrepreneur. She's a necessity entrepreneur. She's not producing anything new to the world, but she's using resources in amazing ways. So she's more like a means entrepreneur rather than an ends entrepreneur. But her enterprise is out of necessity. So when she runs it, the family will suffer. The family is supposed to suffer because only then she can succeed in the enterprise. So she has to make sure and pay up to the supplier to get the best ingredients, the lime and the spices and all that. And if the customer asks for credit, she has to make sure the customer gets credit. And the customer could be a shopkeeper. The customer could be an end user. And the shopkeepers will tell her, you know what, we have a lot of manual laborers. They eat a lot of rice with pickle, and you're giving me too little pickle. And she'll say, don't worry, next time I'll pack it accordingly. So she has to deal with a lot of unique, requests as well. So she moves resources around and around between supplier and customer to run her business, and then, of course, have this family survive with basic necessities until her family has a crisis. Once again, health emergency, or child school fees, for example, or could be to meet some tradition. And then what does she do? Well, she basically has to go to the supplier and say, can you give me credit? She has to go to the customer and say, can you pay up? Because her buffer now is gone. So this is what she does. And here I want to point out this bottom-up approach, because a lot of microfinancing institutions will basically say, I gave you a loan to start a business, and now you're using it for your household. You're misusing it. But they, unfortunately, don't fully understand how resources work in these contexts. They are very fungible. You can't say, here's my business money, here's my customer money for too long. Very soon the needs are, go round and round, the household money and the business money. The very act or the very notion that I have compartments means I have resources. I have compartments. I have my, my time to go to the gym. I have my den. I have my master bedroom. I have this, that. But that means I have resources. In those settings, they all blur together. So resources are very fungible. So again, this bottom-up approach enables people to understand the reality, the ground reality, rather than staying purely top-down as well, right? So what does this mean? Well, first of all, as I said, it's a one-on-one interactional environment. People may be poor, materially constrained in their thinking and feeling, but they can be rich relationally. But again, I want to say that very guardedly because it is a double-edged sword. It's the same relational intensity, richness, knowing everybody personally, that leads people to be ostracized if they don't meet any tradition, that leads people to be publicly humiliated in a non-collateral loan by the lender, who will come and shout all possible abuses outside their home and take away the only thing they have, which is their dignity. So it's a double-edged sword. I don't ever want to romanticize this, but I'm just saying that there is something one could build on, which is this relational strength as well, right? Marketplace literacy in developing versus advanced economies. I just want to give you a thought experiment. If you told me, now I've studied it more than 25 years, I guess, but if you told me, here's a third-grade educated person in the US versus a third-grade educated person in urban Mexico or in Tanzania, who has more functional literacy in the marketplace? Who has more marketplace literacy? And I would point to the person in more extreme poverty in a developing context. When you are low literate and poor in the US or in an advanced economy, you can be quite isolated. The stores assume a certain level of literacy in reading. It's not like you go to the market and bargain and talk to people in a one-on-one interactional world, right? The stores do the adding for you with all the technology. You don't have to bargain and count. It's just set. You just have to follow along. And that doesn't help you with actually learning whether you're getting cheated and counting and so on, right? And usually you're working, in some, large enterprise or, and so on in a particular job. Whereas in a developing context, people are essentially starting their own enterprise out of necessity. So they have to learn the marketplace. So ironically, it's in more extreme poverty that people have higher functional literacy, because they have no way other than to start an enterprise. So it's very ironic, and it's something to keep in mind as well. Poverty is, in every context is harsh. There's no comparing it at all. So what does it mean for your project? Well, social relationship mean anything, but they're double-edged, so can you build on it? Maybe with your partners, with your customers, with the way you go about things, and we'll get to that very soon. Can I trust you? I'm a big company, I'm a startup, I'm so-and-so. Doesn't mean a thing. If something goes wrong, can I call you? You told me it's a good product. I understand exchange. Don't give me all these broad ideas of how markets work and competition. No. I understand exchange. I'll give you something, you'll give me back something. Can I call you if something goes wrong? Can I trust you? Very human, right? Nothing abstract. Can the social be built in to educate, create partnerships, deliver solutions, right? Think about that. There is a richness there, a potential richness there that you could take advantage of. So those are some of the things I wanted to talk, and again, this applies to your employees, suppliers, your partners, and so on. So again, any questions, any quick questions before I turn things over to Ron? Thank you for your attention, really appreciate it. We will turn things over to Ron, who's going to talk to you about an immersion exercise, and then we'll be quick to give you a break in about 20, 25 minutes. So please stay attentive, and it's my pleasure to turn things over to Ron. Ron?